Here is from Turning Point's Action, which Charlie Kirk, right-wing radio host, Turning Points USA, which is supposed to be for young kids. Like, they are trying to literally groom kids to be conservatives. Yes, they claim you're grooming the kids. You're grooming the kids. No, this is literally supposed to be targeted towards kids. Now, it's of course not. You'll see they tried to and they failed. You'll see there's advertisements all over the screen for gold and silver, which tells you the target audience that this is going to. But here's Marjorie Taylor Greene talking about Joe Biden, comparing him to LBJ and FDR.
Lyndon B. Johnson is very similar to Joe Biden. How are they the same? They're both Democrat socialists.
Democrat socialists. For those of you who don't know, by the way, I won't go into the vast distinctions between different social democracy, democratic socialists, socialists, Marxists, Leninists, Stalinists, Maoists, whatever buzzword you want to throw out. I just want to point out that she says Democrat socialist, which is not a real thing. It's democratic socialist. They say Democrat hard because it's the rat that's emphasized. That's why they say this. If you ever see like Tucker Carlson, well, he's off the air now, but if you ever see like Sean Hannity or any of these people, they always go Democrat because they want it to sound like rat.
Lyndon B. Johnson was the majority leader in the Senate. Does that sound familiar? He was vice president to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama. He was appointed as the president after JFK to Obama.
Let me just rewind this.
President to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama. Lyndon B. Johnson was the majority leader in the Senate. Does that
sound familiar? Let me just tell you that Lyndon Johnson might have been Senate majority leader, but Joe Biden wasn't.
He was vice president to Kennedy. Joe was vice president to Obama.
Wow, they were both vice president.
He was appointed as the president after JFK was assassinated. Then he was elected.
Wait, so is that supposed to be similar? Was Obama assassinated and Joe Biden was president in 2012 or something? What the?
Big socialist programs were the Great Society.
The Great Society? I've heard of that.
The Great Society were big government programs to address education, medical care, urban problems, rural poverty, transportation.
What?
Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps,
and
welfare.
Oh my goodness. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, welfare. Oh my God. The most popular programs in the United States history. Oh my God. Who is this Lyndon Johnson guy? We should vote for him. Now, of course, like, here's the thing. Like, there's plenty to criticize LBJ about. You know, the Vietnam War, the delay in civil rights. I mean, granted, she's not going to talk about it, I guess, but the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act were also passed under Lyndon Johnson. But, like, it's not like Lyndon Johnson was this, like, super progressive anti-racist, by the way. But, like, you know, we take the good with the bad. People are products of the time. He was an old man by that point, but, you know, he did a lot of good stuff. And that's LBJ. You're not even talking about FDR. Like, you're coming at FDR, you're coming at the GOAT, okay? FDR was so popular that he was elected 4 times. They had to put in term limits after him. Like, the dude was so popular that they had to change the Constitution. That's how, like, you're comparing Joe Biden to some of the most influential presidents. And now, if remember, LBJ was appointed, as she pointed out, after the president was assassinated. So LBJ was following from JFK, which was also one of the most popular presidents of all time. These are Democrat, like, legends. You're not talking about, like, some scrub. You're not talking about, you know, some 1850s Dixiecrat. We're talking about the actual goats of the Democratic Party. And she is comparing Joe Biden to them in like saying, like, this is Frankenstein and Dracula.
Of economic opportunity and big labor and labor unions.
Oh, no.
Now, LBJ had the Great Society, but Joe Biden...
Love the Great Society. We need to have a greater society, if you ask me.
Biden had Build Back Better.
Which didn't pass, by the way.
And he still is working on it. The largest public investment in social infrastructure and environmental programs that is actually finishing what FDR started, that LBJ expanded on, and Joe Biden is attempting to complete.
Okay.
Socialism.
Now, I just want to take a second to say that Build Back Better, if it had passed, would have been one of the most influential and huge pieces of legislation to ever pass in the United States. What she's saying is true, other than the fact that she called it socialism, because nothing about it was socialist. Nothing about Build Back Better was socialist. Now, let's put that in its own category. Even if we run with, okay, something like Medicare, which is government-run healthcare, is not technically socialist. And if you look back at the Great Society for LBJ, but you go a little bit further back and you look at the New Deal under FDR, FDR was by absolutely, and neither was LBJ, absolutely no means. This is why we have to know our history. They were absolutely not socialists. Even socialists today or back then, well, definitely back then, would not say, oh yeah, they're socialists. They might approve of some of what they did, but you can just tell that there is not, there is just a total lack of educational background for Marjorie Taylor Greene. She's reading, obviously. She has no idea what this stuff is. She is just learning this stuff as she's reading it. She says Lyndon B. Johnson, like she's finding out that there's a B in between Lyndon and Johnson. Like, what is this B? Baines. What kind of middle name is that? But that's besides the point. FDR was pressured from the left following the 1920s and 1930s and the 1940s up until his death, pretty much, but mostly in the 1930s from his left flank, which actually were socialists. There actually used to be a socialist party that had a lot of, not a lot, but like a relatively a lot of influence within the country. Now, to win some of those people over and to be the compromise candidate, which is what a social democrat is a mixture of socialism and capitalism, which, by the way, the New Deal single-handedly saved capitalism in America, because the Great Depression, you may have heard this, maybe Marjorie Taylor Greene might not have, but in 1929, there was this thing called the Great Depression, where there was a market collapse and capitalism almost went by the wayside without government interference, without government jobs, without government investment in infrastructure. And frankly, you can throw in the fact that there was a war in which the United States came out the single superpower, basically producing goods for across the world, empowering women in the workforce. Wait, what? Empowering and there's problems with the New Deal. There's problems with the Great Society. There is a lack of intersectionality in a lot of this stuff. But to just blatantly disregard the history of our country for the country that they supposedly love, it seems like they absolutely hate everything about our country, by the way, including now and back then. To absolutely disregard all of this stuff and say, you know what, FDR's a socialist, LBJ's a socialist, and Joe Biden's a socialist. Joe Biden was the senator from Delaware that created that at least helped create the problem with the student loan debt crisis. You think that that's a socialist? You have to literally not have ever picked up a child's book to not understand that. Like, you would have to have the thought process of like a caterpillar to think that Joe Biden, who, yeah, maybe is slightly to the left of Obama's presidency. I don't think personally he's to the left of Biden, but, or not Biden, of Obama. But Biden's presidency is a little bit to the left because guess what? There was a primary in 2020 that moved him to the left by a social democrat, Bernie Sanders, and the pressure on that and the labor support and all those things, that is building a movement. That is influencing power. That is what we should be doing. But the rhetoric, this is fear-mongering. This is Red Scare. Communist, Marxist, which again, I say this every single time. I mean, I am trying to understand personally. This is something that I find interesting because of what's going on in Ukraine and in Russia and in Eastern Europe. I am interested in learning more about the Russian Revolution and understanding the factions that grew there, how the Soviet Union came to be, how it collapsed. And it's not to be like, oh, like this is what we should do in America. No, you have to know your history. You have to know what goes on in the world. It's like saying like I'm sure Marjorie Taylor Greene has a very strong opinion about Israel, but I'm 100% sure that she has never read a book. She's never read a news article about the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts from the 1940s, the creation of the country, or anything since, right? So I'm reading a book about the Russian Revolution, understanding that literally there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of subcategories of these socialists that hate each other and they fight amongst each other. It's actually very interesting to learn, but no, Marxist, communist, socialist Joe Biden. Like, the dude is straight up like the credit card senator when he was in the Senate. He is not anywhere near a socialist. Like, Bernie Sanders is not actually even a socialist. People like that's besides the point. Like, that's a conversation for another day. He's a social democrat. He believes in capitalism mixed with socialism. And it doesn't mean like socialism, like we need to overturn and have a revolution. No, it's like something should be run by the government. Healthcare, prisons, education. I mean, basic common goods, the social good. Social contract. I mean, like, these are basic tenets of a society, frankly. But interestingly enough, I won't play it, but Biden turned her words into like a campaign ad, and I thought that was great. It was awesome.